Now, just a little bit of a warning here at the start that there will be some spoilers in this video for the Snyder cut of Justice League. However, if you're someone who has seen the original version and didn't really enjoy it, and you're wondering if it's worth investing 4 hours of your life to watch this one, I will start off with a mainly non-spoiler overview, though there may still be some small ones in there, and then we'll give another warning before getting into heavy spoiler territory. So anyway, let's start with that question. Is this movie worth it? Is it worth the 4-hour commitment considering just how rough or bad the original version was? And in my opinion, absolutely. The Snyder Cut fixes pretty much every single major and minor issue I had with the original version of Justice League. Though yes, it is a rather long movie, and there is quite a bit of exposition, or quite a few scenes of characters standing around telling you what's happening or what you need to know to understand what's happening. And of course, there is that saying that you should show, don't tell the audience, which by and large, I do agree with. It's supposed to be a movie in and of itself, not someone telling you a story in a movie, if you will. But look, if you need a scene or two, or 3 or 4 maybe, to explain why or how something works or convey some important information of some kind, and the rest of your movie is solid, then do what must be done to tell a great story. I'm generally fine with it. Or maybe I've just seen too much anime at this point, where exposition certainly isn't taboo, in fact it's embraced. Anyway, one of the biggest problems with the original version of Justice League is it's very hard to know what in the world is going on and why, and I feel like one of the only reasons I understood it at all is because, yes, I do know some DC lore, and I say some because, especially growing up, I've always been more of a Marvel guy than DC. I almost always spent my precious little allowance on Marvel books and not DC. And so to this day, I still wouldn't consider myself an expert when it comes to DC or anything close to it. And so I could certainly see how someone who knows less than I do, or even nothing at all about the DC universe, would watch that first version and wonder, what is this? And it's not helped by the fact that there is little or no cohesion to the story or film itself. It feels like scenes are slapped together in random order, like outside of the ending. You could shake them up or roll some dice and rearrange the whole thing and end up with the same result, essentially. Here in the Snyder Cut, though, you feel like you're getting a competent and cohesive story that's building and building to something. No longer do things just seem to happen at random, or are you left scratching your head wondering if you missed something because you're not sure why a character is doing what they're doing or reacting the way they are. One scene actually plays into the next, which obviously helps the pacing and flow immensely, even again considering how much exposition you get along the way, and that this movie is introducing a lot of new characters and throwing a lot at you in general. But all of those characters feel like they have a place now, which was one of my biggest complaints about the original version, especially when it comes to the ending of the film. And they also have motivations, go figure. In fact, one of the best changes is giving actual motivation to Steppenwolf, our villain who is no longer our big overarching villain to the whole thing anymore, since Darkseid is not only mentioned in this version, where he wasn't mentioned at all in the original, but he is seen and is part of the movie and story. I mean, for all you knew in the original version, Steppenwolf was it. He's the big bad guy in the galaxy or DC universe, and he wants to destroy the Earth because, well, he's the big bad guy, and that's what they do, I guess. And so knowing his motivation and the backstory and who Darkseid is just helps the movie feel much more epic in scope and scale. This version deserves the name Justice League and makes you actually care about not only the characters in it, but the larger story and the DCEU in general. In fact, I enjoyed it so much that when it was over, I got this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach when I realized this would be it. The story won't be continuing. And you really do want it to continue. You want to see what happens next because, though a self-contained story by and large, it does also set up a much, much greater and bigger story to come. And so another, I guess you could call it, problem that goes along with this, with wanting this particular story to continue, or with this version of Justice League being so good, is that it makes me less excited for DC's next batch of movies that won't be a part of this. Because really this one movie, I guess you could say, fixes the DCEU. It makes it good and at least got me vested in the whole thing. And I know, or from what I've seen, critic reviews have been pretty split on this one, with a lot of them saying something along the lines of this is the same movie as before, only it's longer now, or that it's even worse this time. But I couldn't disagree more with them, and I'm not sure if these reviews are coming from critics who didn't want to sit through a 4-hour comic book movie that was a remake of one they didn't like in the first place, and if they're not comic book fans overall or fans of comic book movies, I could see having a negative attitude towards a 4-hour version of a 2-hour movie you didn't like. Not saying that's professional or fair to the film, but I do get it. I also do have to wonder how much comes from some critics upset over, as they see it, Warner Brothers caving into the fans who'd been asking for the Snyder Cut for years now, because it's such a horrible thing when a company listens to its fans, to its paying customers, and gives them the product they want, and then they buy it and end up happy with it, and everyone wins. And yes, I do get it, they feel some fans maybe went too far with their demands for the Snyder Cut, and some no doubt did, and they then called those fans some pretty horrible things. But anytime you have a large collection of people, you'll have at least some bad characters or some bad apples, and we should never be so ignorant as to assume that the actions of the one represent the whole, or to punish the many because of the few. But anyway, to get back to the film, and maybe a bit more deeper into spoiler territory here, so be warned, perhaps the best overall change here is to the ending of the movie, where it's no longer just about the rest of the Justice League having to basically stall Steppenwolf until Superman shows up and saves the day with ease. Even though, yeah, he does kind of do that in this version, and it's actually quite awesome when he does. But the difference here is that it really feels like every member of the Justice League had a huge part to play in the end or in the final victory. Yes, Superman still beats the crap out of Steppenwolf, but that alone was not what led to victory, like it kind of did in the first one. Them all working together was what did it. Same way, especially in the first Avengers movie, that every team member had a part to play despite huge discrepancies in power levels. For example, Hawkeye and Black Widow felt just as important as Thor and Hulk. And something very similar to that happens here in the Snyder Cut, and one of the scenes, or should I say parts, that's noticeably and thankfully absent in this version, in the Snyder Cut here, is the whole awkward Russian family subplot. And it's only now after seeing the new version that I understand why it was in the original version in the first place, and it was in there quite literally just to give the Flash something to do in the end. That's it. It's like they couldn't find anything else important for him to do in that final battle, so they had him run off to save a truck full of people, and they set the family up throughout the film so that you'd actually care that he was doing this, that it was impactful that he was saving a family you had, supposed to be anyway, grown attached to. But oddly enough, they kind of undermine it and play it as a joke because after the Flash saves the family, Superman flies by carrying a whole apartment building full of people, which really kind of shines a light on the problem with the Flash in that original version, which is that his only power is that he's super fast, which I'm not saying is a bad power, but basically Superman is shown to be just as fast as him, which leaves the Flash feeling like all he is one power Superman has, and arguably not the best or coolest one. In the Snyder Cut, though, again, major spoilers here, after it looks like the team fails, that Darkseid is going to win and the world is going to be destroyed, and we do actually see that start to happen, the Flash actually turns back time a few moments and saves the day, which is obviously a much bigger deal than saving one random family. Not that saving even one person isn't or shouldn't be regarded as heroic or worthwhile or anything like that. Another terrific change, or maybe I should almost say addition, was Cyborg, because in the original version he's just kind of there. He was probably the least used and underdeveloped character, while in this one it's the opposite. He not only has a whole story, but it's a terrific one, and I'd even say he has the best personal story or arc in the film, and by quite a long shot. And much like the Flash, it again feels like he has a much bigger part to play in that final battle. And so I just think one of the more impressive parts overall is how much, obviously, is reused from that original version. Much of it still is here, though there are scenes taken out, again like the Russian family or the scene with Batman on the roof with the Parademon. But so much of it is just completely recontextualized and made so much better by just the smallest of changes sometimes, or the smallest of subtractions. The whole Superman Returns portion of the movie benefits from this and has a much different feel to it now, and it's made much clearer this time how and why it works, and we also understand better that it took some time for him to sort of reclaim and sort out his memories and to figure out again who he is. They also took out that line where he asks Batman, "Do you bleed?" which was a callback to Batman vs. Superman, where Batman asks him that. Which, I don't know, I personally didn't like it in this movie. I didn't like how vindictive it made Superman feel right there, even though, sure, maybe you could almost argue it makes sense considering just how angry Superman is destined to become, not only at Batman, but the world after he lets a pregnant Lois Lane die, which is what we see the aftermath of in that dystopian future in the Epilogue. Which I also thought was really good, the Epilogue, I mean, and kudos to Jared Leto for doing a much better job with Joker here than he did in Suicide Squad. The only problem with it, though, the Epilogue I mean, is it being so good and intriguing is almost frustrating, because now I really want to see this story continue, like I talked about before. And I think almost more than anything, that tells me how much I really enjoyed this version and how much I did not like the first one. Because at the end of the original version of Justice League, the movie was such a mess, I didn't care if that story continued. I didn't want to see another movie like it, and I wasn't vested in the characters or the universe itself or the overall story. Not that it felt like there was much of an overall story, which was part of the problem, or a bigger universe out there, since again Steppenwolf was played as the big bad guy and he was dead, so felt like we got a pretty solid, though maybe not good, resolution to everything. This time though, all the characters shine, both the good guys and the bad guys, though some of course do shine a bit brighter, like again Cyborg, but I enjoyed and cared about all of them. Also, when it ended, I was immediately wanting to see that next part. I'm vested in the overall story along with the characters, and it's sad to know it's not going to happen. It's sad to know what could have been had Zack Snyder given us this version originally, or something like it. Though I certainly do understand why he stepped away. His daughter took her own life, if you didn't know, and I place no fault upon him for what became of that original version of Justice League, nor do I have any sort of ill will towards him for that. And I thought it was very fitting that the film was indeed dedicated to his daughter. But anyway here, though I could probably dig into even more little details or changes, though I'm sure I've missed quite a few of them in that first watching, I think I covered most of the big ones, or most of the things that made this a far, far superior version to the original, and one definitely worth checking out if you're interested in DC Comics or just a good, well-told story. It truly does justice to the name Justice League. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to tell me if you've seen the Snyder Cut and what did you think of it? Far superior to the original, or maybe not? Did you have issues with it? Was it maybe too long, too much exposition? Or tell me what you loved about it. One way or another, leave a comment below and let's talk some DC. And until next time, thanks for watching.